Division, IRRI Crop Systems Analysis, and Professor of Crop Physiology at Wageningen University in the Netherlands. He obtained his PhD with distinction in 1983 from Wageningen University, and his thesis was on physiology of forage maize in relation to its productivity and quality. In 1984, he stayed at Cornell University for about a year, working on potato physiology. Since 1986, he has been full-time professor responsible for teaching and research in crop and grassland science. His current research projects include social and agronomic aspects of biodiversity in Africa, QTL-based modeling of crop growth and quality, modeling of basic processes in photosystems of C3 and C4 plants under stress, and chain management of agricultural produce in Africa, among others. He is co-author of more than 400 scientific papers published in refereed international journals, 15 books, and more than 160 papers in proceedings and books of abstracts. He has completed the supervision of over 85 PhD students and is currently supervising about 30 more, many of them working outside the Netherlands. He is editor-in-chief of Potato Research and editor of Annals of Applied Biology, Frontiers in Plant Science, and Fossil. His talk is going to be on the social science sequel to growing rice like wheat. Transition towards dry rice cultivation requires integration of natural and social sciences. Please join me in welcoming Professor Paul Struik.
Thank you very much for a very nice introduction. It's great to see you all here. Thank you very much for coming. And it's a rather special talk. It's not a talk about what we have done, but it's a talk what we would like to do and what we would like to do together with you. So it's a sort of request, a plea, and also an invitation for collaboration. I'm trained as a agronomist and developed into a sort of crop physiologist. But in Wageningen, it's very important for plant scientists to collaborate with social sciences. In the Netherlands, we call that beta-gamma integration, but it's a sort of integration between natural and social sciences. It's a great challenge for all of us, because we need to learn to speak each other's languages, each other's traditions and methodologies, etc. But it makes science more relevant, at least for us plant scientists. And what I would like to do now is to invite you to think about the opportunities to convert a typical natural science program into a sequel that also involves social sciences. So the title of my presentation is the Social Science Sequel to Growing Rice Like Wheat. That's a program that's currently running, and we're here at IRRI to review progress. And the subtitle is Transition Towards Dry Rice Cultivation, which requires integration of natural and social sciences. I hope that it will work. The overview of my presentation is, first of all, why this talk, and then I will. No, it works. So why this talk, and then I will give you a very brief overview of growing rice like wheat, and then why would we require a sequel, and then the next one is, and I now have to dive into my memory. Thank you. What to do? What do you want to achieve? And finally, the opportunities that we have to create something together. Sorry?
The lower part will go to be for next slide.
Okay. Thank you. So, why this talk? Well, there are 3 pillars of all the international policies for food security and also the protection of natural resources. And these 3 pillars are the right to food, intensification of agriculture, and also sustainability. You see that in all the policy documents that are produced at the moment. But these three pillars actually create a lot of debate. And quite often these debates are also very, very hefty. Debates on technology, on ethics, on ecology, and also on the economics of production of food. And that's certainly also true for rice, and you know all that in rice the big issue is water. Now the transition to save water, which is needed certainly in Asia, requires a number of things. First of all, transition towards water-saving rice systems requires socio-economic changes, both at the level of the individual plot, the level of the individual farm, but also at the level of higher levels of organization. We need to change the whole system of water management, etc., and also the governance that goes with it. Optimizing the rice production within the normal framework of genotype by environment, by management, by society interactions will definitely demand innovative approaches that will require a considerable change also in institutional infrastructure. It's not just technology, it is certainly also sociology, and you know that much better than I do. We need to create a new knowledge chain, and that will have to be adapted also to make sure that it works. And we have to alter our water management. And that requires a mapping, but also analysis of impact pathways to the transition from paddy rice to aerobic rice, or even dryland rice. I love the term impact pathways because, well, for a physiologist that is an appealing term. Moreover, well, if we want to grow rice more like we grow wheat, then we also need to conceptualize also research. We need to conceptualize research that is integrating social and natural sciences, and that consists of two main types of research. We need experimental field research on the agronomic and socio-economic consequences of changing of existing systems, and we need empirical research on existing outlet rice production systems to identify key success factors of those systems. Like I said, in Wageningen, the integration between social and natural sciences is important, and we try to seek synergy also with you, the IRRI staff, to draft a program consisting of a social science sequel of the current natural science oriented program, Growing Rice Like Wheat. The current program is very much focused on the natural sciences, on physiological mechanisms, on options to genetically improve the rice crop, etc., but it does not contain a social science component, and we do believe that if we want to implement our findings, then we also need to have an approach that pays attention to social processes as well. Seeking synergy with social sciences is also an important key element of the research program of my center, and well, about 25% of our PhDs are actually working in a framework that integrates natural and social sciences. Well, let me give you a very brief overview of growing rice like wheat. If you want to know all the details, there will be a seminar later this week where the PhDs involved in this program will present their current status of affairs. And this is the logo that we use for our program. Well, the program is meant to understand more about the mechanisms of drought tolerance in rice by comparing rice with wheat. So there are physiological studies on how wheat responds to drought stress and how rice responds to it, and then try to compare what are the differences in mechanisms, and thereby we want to learn more about rice. And there are 6 PhDs currently involved in this program. And there are actually 2 major approaches, and there is also an integration. PhD 1 works mainly on the morphology and anatomy, so those kind of changes in response to drought. PhD 2 is working on the hormonal regulation, especially also in relation to roots, root architecture, etc. PhD 3 is working on the whole plant physiology of adaptation to stress, and obviously these 3 PhDs work very closely together, so that's the first approach. Then there is a PhD, and he's based here at IRRI, working on the genome-wide association mapping, and obviously there's close interaction between those, that PhD and the 3 here, exchanging samples, working on the same crops, working on the same treatments, etc. And then we have PhD 5, working on the transcriptomics and also on sort of integration. And there's another integrative PhD, and that's PhD 6, working on modeling approaches, trying to make the information more general and generally applicable. There are many different groups involved. It's really an international team. First of all, I need to acknowledge the provider of the funds. It's an individual whose name I can't disclose, but an individual person has donated money to the Wageningen University funds, and that fund is used for this program. But of course, we need many more resources, so there are also other types of funding included. We have a management team in Wageningen in place, and there's a research team with 4 different groups. It's the plant sciences of Wageningen University, both crop physiology and plant physiology. IRRI is very strongly involved, and we have the Department of Crop Physiology in Bangalore, India, and we have the Yangtze University in Jiangsu, China. The objectives and the approach of the program are as follows. Well, we try to unravel the mechanisms that are responsible for drought tolerance in rice, and we want to compare those mechanisms with drought responses in wheat to learn more about it. And we also want to provide a scientific basis for agronomic and breeding approaches to grow rice with less water. So to grow rice more like wheat. And we have 2 basic approaches as shown in the previous slides. So we have a mechanistic drought tolerance study of various types of rice compared to wheat, carried out by 4 different PhD candidates, and then we have the genome-wide association mapping and the QTL meta-analysis in rice carried out here at IRRI to explore genetic variation and also to provide mechanistic leads. So for approach number 1, so we have 4 PhDs with a different focus. We have Prini here working in Bangalore, together with the Center for Crop Systems Analysis. I don't have a picture of her yet because she just started. And we have Wen Jing, and she's in the audience here somewhere, and she's working in China and working on water relationships, especially focusing on morphology, anatomy, and hydraulics. And that's her picture. We have Giovanni, is also somewhere in the audience, and he's working on physiology and metabolomics. And we have Beatrice working on the roots and also the interaction with mycorrhiza, etc. And working on the hormone signaling with physiology in Wageningen. And then we have the second approach carried out by Nitin Kadam, and he's working at IRRI, and he works on a phenotyping analysis, carrying out genotype analysis, and working on association analysis, and then trying to do some gene discovery. So it's really a big effort to create a genome-wide approach to identify genes that are associated with very complex traits related to drought stress, including yield, water use efficiency, and all kinds of other traits. And like I said, they all work together. So we have that approach number 1 with the 4 PhDs and the approach number 2 with the team now. And there's a lot of interaction there, exchange of samples, working together on the same experiments, etc., etc. And it really works wonderfully. I mean, it's a great pleasure to be present here this week and to see how it all fits together into a beautiful program. Why do we need a sequel? Well, the issue is relatively simple. The common sense knowledge is that lowland flooded rice is the best practice, and at least it's yielding most, and that upland rain-fed rice has much less potential. That's a common feeling. But there are all kinds of recent research initiatives that are focusing on water reduction, like the aerobic rice here at IRRI, but also the system of rice intensification, although I'm not sure whether it's the correct environment here at IRRI to mention this type of research. But they do claim high yield potentials among flooded conditions. But, well, from a social science point of view, you might want to ask the question, where is the common sense for, well, the need to have this lowland flooded rice? Why can't we also have other systems that might as well work with lower yields but with much less resources? Well, for me, that is, you can put that in a sort of equation. I love equations because I'm a crop physiologist and a modeler, so we need an equation here as well. And you could actually state that the performance is the average outcome of a production system, the MU, plus the contribution of all the technological factors at each part of the system and the interaction with other parts of the system, plus the environmental factors at each part of the system, plus all their interactions like shown here. And then we have the social factors. And the social factors, for me, are a little bit of a black box, so that's why I need you. And of course, there is a non-controlled residual factor. So that's what we want to try to unravel. And as a crop physiologist, we are relatively good in trying to unravel part of this equation, but we are very poor in trying to unravel the other part, and we definitely need both parts in order to let it work in practice. Well, changing conditions means changing practices, means changing the social environment. I don't need to explain it to you, so there are differences in labor requirements. We have to take into account the poor farm economics. There is a lot of land pressure in Asia, so there's also a lot of multiple cropping, and there's water scarcity, so we need to look into waterless rice production. And on top of that, we have the problem of climate change, and also rice production contributing to climate change through the methane emission in rice fields. So using less water would be beneficial, but can we do it? So the challenge in agriculture research, which I think needs to be picked up by a sort of sequel of growing rice like wheat, is to design approaches that are effective in creating knowledge that is also usable by farmers based on the participatory approaches, based on co-creation of knowledge. That's a little bit of a buzzword that's very popular in Wageningen, and action research, and obviously also transdisciplinarity. Now, when I talk about this, I rather feel uncomfortable because there's a lot in the sentence where I have no expertise in. I'm not a social scientist at all, so I should be a little bit careful here, but I would love to learn more about it. And like I said, we do have a lot of PhDs together with social sciences, so we're trying to give our input in these kind of issues as well. And well, these approaches involve all the stakeholders, scientists from very different disciplines, and obviously also farmers and other people in society that will need to learn to grow rice in a different way. For me, a sequel of growing rice like wheat means a number of things, and I can imagine that these are open doors for you, but for me they're rather new. So we would require methodological approaches like technography, like diagnostics, like performance, a term coined by Paul Richards in marketing, like joint learning, like analyzing the institutional context. We also need awareness that the technology alone cannot actually expand smallholders' opportunities. We need a lot more than just an improved technology. We also need to mobilize smallholders, for example, through experimental groups, because knowledge transfer is very difficult. And we need to experiment with institutional innovations and with also, well, ways to create institutional change. In a number of programs, we have been trying to do that in Western Africa, for example. And we have learned that it's extremely difficult, and you need to have a long-term commitment with local partners, otherwise it will not work. We need an analysis of agrarian systems, analysis of institutions and interventions. And probably we need to even reorient on integration between natural and social sciences. We are doing that for about 10 years now in marketing, and we are very proud of it, but I also think it has more or less failed because you still haven't got the theoretical breakthroughs that are necessary to really make it work, and that's also why we need help from you. Okay. There are, for me, 4 important how questions. If we want to find practical answers to complicated questions, we first need to ask ourselves how can we catalyze lasting change in an agricultural setting, but also in a sort of institutional environment, both being very, very complex. And the next question is, how can we use the lessons that we have learned about institutional innovation to make local agro-ecosystems actually more resilient and also more suitable for sustainable intensification, which is unavoidable when we want to feed the growing population. And the third how question is, how can sustainable agriculture intensification be orchestrated in such a way that it actually improves the livelihood of not just a few, but of all the rural poor. And we've noticed in other conditions that if you have a new way of growing a crop, it's very difficult to make sure that everyone profits from it. You have to start somewhere, but you have to create a system where it is not only for the few, but it's for all the rural poor. And it's not that doesn't actually make life much harder for the rural poor instead of better. And how can we design and implement agricultural policies that protect smallholder farmers against the threats and the uncertainties associated with globalization of markets? The Netherlands, for example, is importing chicken meat to Ghana, driving the local growers out of the market because it's cheaper to produce the chickens in the Netherlands, but it's not good for any element of sustainability at all. The current trend in science is to enhance intensification because people think it's good for productivity, it's increasing the resource use efficiency, and it's improving sustainability, those three elements: productivity, resource use efficiency, and sustainability. But there's a tendency to over-stress that. There is a strong focus on win-win situations, or even win-wins, such as in the FAO's water, energy, land, and food nexus. There's an enormous amount of optimism there. If we do it better, then we can just improve everything at the same time. And Wageningen University is also guilty of that, because Wageningen University aims to produce 2 times more with 2 times less. So 2 times more input, 2 times more output with 2 times less input. Well, it sounds more or less like a miracle to me. I'm not sure how we're going to realize that. But we are all descendants of the WIT school, the crop modeler that started the crop modeling approaches in the 1960s in Wageningen. And a very important and famous statement of Kees de Wit is that it may be concluded that no production resource is used with any less efficiency, and that most production resources are actually used with more efficiency with increasing yield due to further optimizing of growing conditions. That is a sort of positive belief that is there in crop science at the moment, and that is actually directing all our activities. But I'm not sure whether it's true in all cases, because win-win situations are rather rare, and that is certainly also true when designing savings such as using rice. So we need a sort of agronomy that is not focusing on the science of win-win, but is actually focusing on the science of trade-offs. And there's not much of that out there yet. We need to have quantitative assessments of objectives, of tools, of resources, of cost for systems that actually look beyond today, that look beyond one's own plot or one's own farm or property system, and which really dives into the knowledge of trade-offs. And what would we like to achieve when we have a social science sequel to growing rice like wheat? Well, I think I'm in the right place, because IRRI has already paid a lot of attention to upland rice research already a long time ago, and I copied a few covers of books that have been produced here by IRRI. Very nice analysis of what you can do with upland rice, and what are the perspectives, difficulties, and opportunities. Well, given the issues at stake, we would like to opt for a sort of coalition of the willing, to cite Obama, and we would like to create new theoretical frameworks for full integration of natural and social sciences, a conceptual framework for integral and quantitative trade-off analysis. We would like to create crossovers between methodologies, analytical tools, and scientific languages to cross barriers there, and we would like to go for training systems that actually creates graduates that are real integrators instead of sort of converted natural or converted social scientists that we have there right now. And we would like to create a sort of leadership and governance in integrating natural and social sciences. I know these are awfully big words, and I have to be modest because, like I said, I'm not a social scientist. But I do believe in crossing the barriers between sciences, and I do believe in the power of trying to seek synergy between plant sciences and social sciences. But I also believe that we still have a long way to go, and that what Wageningen is doing at the moment is it's more or less leveling off in terms of impact. So that's why we need to go out and look for opportunities to carry out research with other institutions where there is already a tradition of integrating social and natural sciences for a long time, like here at IRRI. When we apply for programs that integrate natural and social sciences, we always have to go through this U-shaped process. So it starts here and we have to go and we have to end there. And we always need to make very clear what kind of problem we want to address. We need to analyze what are actually the direct causes. And if you know the direct causes, you need to analyze what are the underlying knowledge-related causes. So you need to transfer a direct cause into something that is a knowledge problem. And if you have identified a knowledge problem, then you need to design the research and developmental outputs. So here is more the output part of the scheme. And you need to define the outcomes, which is different from outputs. And you need to define the impact. And so there are very special schemes that you need to fill out to make visible how you have done through all these different steps in order to formulate research that's not only scientifically relevant, but that also creates output, outcome, and impact. And that's not always easy, but well, we've been trained in that. And also the sequel of growing a rice-like peach should go through these different stages. And when thinking about a sequel, I would like to see a sort of implementation of innovative strategies for water-limited rice production, starting with agronomy, where we can improve rice technologies using water-saving strategies, and from there, and also linked to that is the analysis of institutional constraints, but also opportunities for technology change. That's more rural sociology. We need to enable farmers to use those technologies. That's something for communication sciences. We need to create institutional change to scale up those new technologies. And that's more something for anthropologists. We also need to design appropriate implementation strategies for different environments in Southeast Asia. But that's a joint effort of all the people involved in the program. And we need to compare with other social science initiatives such as the SRI, and also design quantitative models for complex adaptive systems. And we need not only use models in plant sciences, but we also need to use models in social science to make their results more applicable. And that again is also a joint effort. So this is a very first brief map of what I think would be relevant as a sort of sequel of the current natural science program on growing rice like wheat. And again, I have to be modest because I'm not a social scientist. There are also opportunities. There will be a WOTRO call. WOTRO is a sort of organization in the Netherlands for scientific research. It's funding programs in the south. And you can only apply when you are from a Dutch university. But WOTRO will have a call that focuses on collaboration between Dutch universities and the IRRI institutes. That call will come out very soon. And that would be an opportunity to submit a proposal on the sequel, the social science sequel of growing rice like wheat. The amount of money involved here is maximum about 700,000 euros for a 4 to 5 year program. You can appoint a couple of PhDs and perhaps also a postdoc with that amount of money. Another option is INREF, which is Wageningen funding. So it's funding from our university, aimed at creating international collaboration on research and education. It's not only research, it's also education. The funding here is about 1 million euros, but they also want you to match that funds with another million or something like that, so creating a total amount of about 2 million, meaning that you have a program with about 10 PhD students and working on the same topic. So that would be another option. It would be a bigger program than the workshop. And of course, there's always an opportunity to try to find international donors. So I'm not only requesting for collaboration, I'm also requesting for making use of opportunities. I'm not asking for money because the money should come from any of these. So that was my talk. Again, it's an invitation, collaboration, and I would be very welcome to receive any comments and any initiatives from your side to make this collaboration work. And I would like to thank you very much for the opportunity of telling the story too. Thank you.
Thank you very much for talking about the Growing Rice Livelihood Program and mentioning the need for the social science sequence and the requirements and some strategies. So the floor is now open for questions.
Sorry, I missed the first few slides, so maybe you presented this already. Do you have a sense for how much of the rice area would be potentially applicable for this kind of water conserving technologies, however they may turn out to be? I mean, what kind of proportion of the rice systems would we be looking at that are suitable or need this kind of intervention, which is quite a dramatic change in the way rice would be grown in the future?
I think that depends very much on the environmental conditions, but also obviously on the social conditions. So it will be site specific. I can imagine that in some parts you probably have to go to at least 30-40% of the acreage that needs to be grown with water saving strategies. In other parts it might be much less, but it all depends on the situation. It also depends on the competition between different parts of society for water and how scarce your water actually is. Well, we see trends that it's becoming more and more scarce, it's becoming more and more polluted, and there's more and more competition for the available water. So yeah, trends will be that it will be an increasing trend and definitely not stop somewhere. I'm sure there are experts in the audience who know much more about it than I do.
Well, thanks very much for your thought-provoking presentation. I see a big gap between what your plant-based scientists are doing. They're working in very basic research areas, and then at the same time you're wanting to get out and do the social and socio-economic aspects. But with what materials? It's going to be a long time before we have rice varieties with the yield potential of current varieties and with the water requirement of wheat. We also have to remember that wheat is grown under cold conditions, low evaporative demand, whereas rice, sometimes the evaporative demand will be much higher, especially in dry environments. So what's the material that you're going to work with to do the social aspects of this? We already have a lot of work going on, especially in India, growing rice a bit like wheat. In other words, it's dry seeded instead of transplanted. The fields are not puddled. They are not continuously flooded unless there's lots of rain, but if it's grown in the dry season, they're occasionally irrigated. So there's big programs already happening, especially through the CESAR program at the moment, which is just being reviewed and maybe going into the next stage. So my thinking is that you need to find out more about these programs and explore the possibility of linking with them. And I guess the people to talk to are Matthew and here.
Well, this is my first time at IRRI, I must
Welcome to IRRI.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm very embarrassed about that. But we have a collaborative program with IRRI for a while, and I had PhD students working at IRRI before. So yes, the names that you mentioned are familiar to me. I also think that timing is of an essence. I mean, we can't wait with this kind of programs until the material is there.
Correct. That's why I'm saying you need something in the middle
You need
where things are already happening about doing adaptive research on rice-like wheat, partly-like wheat systems. It's happening out there now on a fairly decent scale, and maybe that's where you should be trying to develop the links. So anyway, I'd encourage you to talk to Matthew and David.
I will definitely do that. I also have to say two more things. My social science partner has a program in India for a while, and we can build on the institutional interactions that have been created there. And we have also linkages in China, with, for example, the cow in Beijing, and they're also working on aerobic rice. So there are some institutional linkages already in place. It's not the first time that we do this, but in India it's mainly focusing on the social sciences. In China, our linkages are mainly focusing on the crop physiology, and we need to do both. So we're trying to create something which will allow us to do both at the same time, and well, that's the reason we're talking.
And is Ruben here? Ruben Van Heyen? He's also doing a lot of work throughout in China and more in Southeast Asia too, in relation to systems growing rice with less water. So potential links there with the irrigated. Oh, what's it called these days? Corrigan.
Thank you for your presentation. One of our experience with the Corriga project is working with multi-stakeholder type of engagement and looking into institutional systems. I wonder whether the lack of a material technology is, you think, a kind of a hindrance to get people engaged in a multi-stakeholder process.
Yeah, at the moment it certainly is. But again, we don't want to wait until all the material is there. So we need to find ways where we can already create the institutional framework that we need to get it going before we actually have all material there. So there's a big challenge there, and well, that's also the reason of being here and trying to explore what the opportunities are and how we can actually make progress when we still have time to do the research.
Questions?
Yeah, just a very short one. I am crop physiologist, and I see you have an audience of technological people, not only social people. They are just were expecting, and until now the one to ask has been mainly these specialists, these technological people. And it's very interesting that you have presented us your project, because I think we were not aware of this existing project already ongoing. And thank you for doing that. So my short question is, you have mentioned that you are going to report on the ongoing project, and it has not been advertised yet. So do you have a
Krishna, can you provide the details of that? Our host, yeah.
Right. I think this had to be advertised on it had to be Tuesday as a CSG seminar, but for some reason, because of the review processes are shifted, so then we have arranged as a special CSG seminar tomorrow, which is at 1:15 in the Umaru building. So all the PhDs will report on the progress, in brief, highlighting their work and the future work. So you're all welcome to join and to see where we are with respect to the project. Yeah? And this was the whole point of introducing the project to you guys. Yeah.
Any other questions? No? Okay. With that, please join me in thanking Paul for